Hello, hello, and welcome to this edition, a new edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, CEO of, I know, I like to use my fingers. It draws their attention as they're scrolling, Seth. That's what we do. Anyway, I'm Jay Ruane, CEO of Ruane Attorneys, managing partner of Ruane Attorneys, new director of legal operations for Ruane Attorneys. That man over there, Bryce Benowitz, Blue Shark Digital, Seth J. Price. And Seth, I got to tell you, I am feeling better in the last 48 hours than I have felt in 2 years. And you want to know why?
Why?
I talked to a therapist and I realized me trying to exit my business put me in a bad mental state. I was a hammer in search of nails and I couldn't really do what I love to do, which is make changes, iterate, grow, scale my firm. I had turned over the reins essentially to one of my lawyers who wanted the job, and I felt lost. And last week we had a conversation. He's taking a step back to just be a soldier. I am coming in to run things again as the manager, as the active manager. And I haven't felt this good in forever. And so I know now that, number one, when I do plan on exiting, I need to have something that's going to take the place of my mental bandwidth of running the firm. But we are making so many changes. We're adapting a pod system. We've got 2 pods set up. We're adding 2 more pods by reconfiguring lawyers and support staff. We're going to add 2 more pods in the next year because we have growth plans. I'm excited about all the changes that are happening here at my firm. I'm sure everyone here in the audience is going to hear about it more as we grow. But man, I got to tell you, I'm feeling really good. I did take a pickleball lesson on my sabbatical, which was awesome. I'm going to take another one tomorrow. And I'm going to keep doing some things that separate me from the business a little to give me the perspective that I need. But man, coming back, I feel fired up and I'm loving it. So that's my week. How's your week going?
It's ups and downs. Like your week from 2 weeks ago is, HR ups and downs, trying to figure out how not to make mistakes. We've seen a lot of stuff, like a lot of issues with mental health issues poking up post-COVID.
I had mental health issues the last month. I was depressed.
With you, and then multiply that by 250 people between 2 organizations. It's not nothing. And trying to figure that out, we went back to the drawing board with our testing to see whether or not we could do, not that it's going to show you mental health issues, but like looking at all of the different factors that go into hiring. And it's funny, funny aside, one of the new tests, it's a souped up Myers-Briggs of some sort. They said, hey, Seth, take this to see how you like it. It was actually pretty cool. Immediately upon finishing, giant picture, entrepreneur. It was like they didn't know who I was taking. It was just very, very funny. Extrovert, entrepreneur. It doesn't take a lot to sort of figure that out, but I'm trying to figure out, we talked a lot on the show. We have a really sophisticated recruiting process. And the thing that anybody's been listening to the show, and one of the things I'd like to say is it's so cool between you and me, the amount of feedback we've gotten from listeners and viewers is just amazing. And one of the things that, I hope we share and that I hope that people see is that it is not a straight line moving north. It's not like a hockey stick going up. There's a lot of steps backwards, and every time you think you got it dialed in,
So let me tell you something. This is a conversation I had with my good friend, your friend, and someone who actually successfully transitioned out of the daily running of his own firm is Justin McShane. And so when I sent him I sent a text message to a group I'm in on Friday talking about how I was going to have to make some changes, stepping somebody back. I was giving up my sabbatical, blah, blah, blah. And he sent me a text message. And I got to tell you, this text message resonated with me. And his text message was, Jay, just remember, brother, 2 steps forward and 1 step back is still 1 step forward. And that really resonated with me. And I carried that with me all weekend as I was, fired up, making changes. Here's how I'm going to do things. And I'm excited about the changes. But I'm also going to be more cognizant of where I'm spending my bandwidth. I'm not canceling my vacation that's 3 weeks away. I'm taking time off. This weekend, it's Memorial Day weekend, and I've got a baseball tournament all weekend. I'm gonna be engaged in the moment at the baseball tournament and really enjoy that too. So I'm kind of fired up, but yeah, I mean, the hiring is getting a little easier. It seems we're getting more applicants for open positions. Uh, they're not necessarily great applicants, but we're getting something so that at least my people who are doing that have resumes coming in. Are you seeing that?
I'm seeing everything. I'm just right now. It's two steps one forward, one step back resonates for me. The good news is I'm seeing more resumes. Like I'm seeing the market open. Let's take that as a positive. But I am finding that we are making like we have our longstanding people that have been with us forever. But I am finding more and more short-term mistakes made, and we're not crazy, and going through the process as we always have, and people, amazing people like Bill Biggs is one of my consultants, one of the smartest guys in the room, getting people screened and still things breaking. So I'm right now in a bizarre business mental state in that like you start to doubt yourself because, there's positives where I'm starting to be able to work very well and helping people either turn around or improve from within my team. I felt I lost my mojo there, and that's been very strong. But the ability to sort of source properly so that we don't get early turnover has been something that just really bothers me lately.
Well, let me ask you then, that poses a good question. It's something I think our audience should know about. When you have situations in your office, how often are your team members, either legal staff or support staff, how often are they getting trained or training? Are you doing something weekly, monthly, quarterly? We're talking now, and one of the things that I'm instituting is, I've got this network of criminal defense lawyers, like kick-ass criminal defense lawyers all across the country who I've met over the years, and each one has their sort of specialization, so to speak. Like, Deandra Grant is great on blood testing and chemical testing. Josh Lee is best friends with Terry McCarthy and knows the McCarthy style better than anybody else out there practicing law, and things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, shit, I'm going to tap my friends to come in, do 1-2 hour webinars to my team. I haven't really focused on that in the last couple of years because we're not together. So I'm not, when they're out of the office, I don't know what they say they're lacking. One of my guys said to me, what can I learn more about jury selection? So I gave him 10 resources between videos and things I've written and other people. And he was like drinking from a fire. He's like, this is great. I need more of this. So how often are you guys training?
Yeah, no, look, but we're going in two different directions. You're talking about, hey, how do I improve the piece and look, the answer is I go on every once in a while. Pre-COVID, I remember I set up a DUI thing. I brought down Evan Laveau and one of the great Maryland DUI guys, not at our firm, and they came in and they did like a session for all of our lawyers.
Hey, have me an interview, bring me in for that, man. I think
we talked. This is you were unavailable. And that we've had some really cool, but it's fits and starts. It's not systematic because you have to put it together. And look at I want to say that's the easy part. That's the easy part. Lunch and learns, really, once a month. Pick a topic. You already have the people in your mastermind other places. Get 45 minutes, 30 minutes on a topic. And partly when we were more rigorous with guests, that was the point of this from a business point of view. The piece that I see, and we talk so much about this on the show, how the first person may not work, the second, it's the third. It's getting something off the ground. Right now, if one of your lawyers in pod 3 for criminal leaves, within reason, you know what you need there. You can hire you could screen pit it pretty quickly. You figure out culture, you figure out these things, and you train. What I'm trying to figure out is when you're in growth mode, a lot of people on the show are, and frankly, I still put myself in that place. And I want somebody who's going to take a portfolio. That to me, where there's not already a roadmap, that's where it gets treacherous because you don't have amazing training in place. You're trying to put it in place. And that discipline, we talk about job descriptions all the time. But what happens when the person doing a job for the first time or for the first time meaningfully from your firm actually sets foot at the firm? What do you do at that point?
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's a lot for anybody to walk through the door. One of the things that I'm actually working on this summer is a defined onboarding / welcome / like essentially I want to have your first year with us be scripted out.
That'd be awesome. I need to get through the first month. Blue Shark does an amazing job. I call it the culture bubble. It's not a positive. I probably shouldn't use that term, but they do an amazing job. They meet every department. They go through. There's training. There's manuals. There's training, all sorts of stuff. And I think we have that within our intake department at Price Benowitz. Thank God. But when I leave that bubble and I go to new stuff outside of those places, it's rough. At best, we have an onboarding, but it's only as good as the person who's working for us at that moment.
Let me ask you, you've got a new family lawyer who joins you. When do they get introduced to the personal injury lawyers in your firm who then explain, here's what we do, here's the cases that we want. If any of your clients or your contacts, send them our way. Are you creating those relationships, or are you expecting them to happen without being intentional with them?
You know, it's a really great question. We have moved to, thanks to a great executive director. As you know, we were through the woods after losing a guy off the motorcycle, and our current executive director is now approaching 2 years. We now have quarterly all hands where we do that in a more systematic way. It is not as casual as, you know, with criminal. The cadence of having a lunch meeting or even a breakfast meeting doesn't happen. People are in court. It's not, you know, the PI world, they'll take meetings all day long for the most part. I'm being sarcastic, right, but it's a different cadence. So we try to do that through our quarterly meetings. I wish there was more of it. If somebody is in an office with other people, it happens organically, but we don't do as much of that. And that's why we at least per quarter, there's an understanding of what everybody does.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's really important, and I'm going to throw something out there that I recall happening at another firm, and it's going to break your heart. It's going to break the heart of every PI lawyer that was out there. They had somebody on intake who they happened to be walking through the intake area one day, and they overheard one of their intake people say, "No, I'm sorry, we don't do truck accidents, we do car accidents," and they hung up the phone. And you know, that was a training failure on intake, of course, but I think that speaks to the larger question of, does everybody in your firm know what it is that everybody else does? I mean, kind of, we talked about this on a show like months ago about how Ralph Lauren, if you're going to go work for corporate, you got to spend the first month on the floor in a retail store just so you can understand what retailing and how important it is to their business and what it is. And I think that's something that it's almost necessary in a law firm too. Have those conversations early and often so that people can understand what it is that you do. I had a perfect example. I rejected a client today who had come in for a referral. They wanted to have a sit down with me 2 weeks ago. They paid an exorbitant amount of money because my time is very valuable. And we quoted not a ridiculous fee. I mean, it was reasonable for what the 2 hours I had to spend with her. But, and then she emailed today saying, "I really would like you to handle this type of case." Now, could I do it? Absolutely.
Right.
Will I do it? Absolutely not. Because it's not the type of case that I enjoy doing. I mean, in my past years, would I have taken this money gladly and smiled? Absolutely. But I have to realize that I'm growing something that's different than what I did 15 years ago, hell, even 5 years ago. And that's one of the things that I think that has made me ebullient today, is that the business that I stepped away from to let somebody else manage 2 years ago, and I'm coming back to, has grown by like 40%. I mean, we're at 25% growth this year. We tacked on another 15 last year. I mean, we are double where we were 2 years ago. So if that's the case, it's like I almost get to reinvent and make a brand new thing with people that know me and love me and trust me to lead them the right way. So like I said, I'm in a good headspace now. I'm sure it'll get ruined at some point, but
it's funny because I had lunch today with somebody who basically does one area of law, been very, very successful. And I met with him a few weeks back and said, "What are you doing?" He was dabbling in a bunch of other areas. Two of the areas that are biggest areas. "What are you doing? You're doing so well in this one area. Why are you dabbling?" And he took me to lunch today and said, "You know, you're right. And we want you to do these cases outside of our sweet spot," which was awesome. But he asked me, "Hey, your growth seems to have curtailed a little bit. Like I don't see you growing as fast as you once were. And like number of lawyers, number of offices, yada, yada." And I said, to a certain extent, they're right in that one of the things, and we talked a lot on the show throughout COVID, was up leveling what we had. Like, instead of hiring a new lawyer, do I have an F-tard who is not performing particularly well? Again, using the Jack Welch concept, do I have a couple lawyers that are really revenue-wise so low, performance-wise not the brand we want to present? And we've been basically spending the last 9 to 12 months trying to up level those people, which is not easy, because now you're not just growing, but you're actually trying to like improve. But I think that is where some of these areas you just talked about, where the other guys may be like mediocre, but at least they knew everything going on. Now you're back to really dialing in your training and your cross-pollination to make sure these new excellent guys. But the truth is, when we upgrade, it generally comes with a better Pentium that allows people to get that concept, where you don't need to say, hey, if there's a family law case, make sure you feed it through. The A players kind of get that naturally, and it takes a lot less reinforcing on the firm's part.
Okay. So I got a question for you, and I'm going to throw this at you. We were at Fireproof Weekend together a while back. In fact, I think next week we're going to get to have a sit down with Mike Moore, so I'm excited about that. And one of the things that they talked about was you want 40% for compensation, which makes sense in the Seth Price model.
For owner compensation you're talking about?
No. I think it was overall compensation for your team,
compensation.
40%. Owner compensation at 40% would be a hell of a profit margin. But so you're at 40%, right? I'm way over that. And I'm way over that because of, I don't want to call it my mismanagement, but my generosity, maybe, where I'm overpaying some people.
I think criminal defense has different margins. You can't take the immigration playbook, and because there you have less lawyers, more staff. PI similar, criminals the other way around.
Criminals, it's mostly lawyers. It's mostly lawyers, and so I'm looking at my numbers and I'm thinking, okay, well, so last year I was at 60% on compensation, which is definitely too high. This year, by adding the revenue that we're doing, we're adding 7 figures of revenue this year, well over 7 figures of revenue in one calendar year. When I get to the end of the year, it looks like my compensation is going to be right at that 40% level. Now, do I realize that, hey, you know what, adding 7 figures of revenue, I probably need to add more staff? Do I just take some of that and say, you know what, I could live at 45 or 50% compensation as my number, because I'm only spending 10% on marketing. I'm not spending 15. I'll spend it otherwhere. How do you determine at what point do you need more people? Is it when you are getting yelled at by your people saying, we have no more bandwidth, we need more? Like, how do you know when to hire is my question.
It's so funny. And I find it, to say that as a firm is really difficult, because there's so many different components in the mix, right? So to me, like, one place you don't want to be underserving is intake, right? Every time I spend more money on intake, especially if you have an overseas component to it, like, why are you being skimpy? If you added 2 more intake people, would you make more money? Yes, great, add them. Lawyer-wise, is it possible if your systems are better, you don't need more of them? Hopefully so. Hopefully it's not a lawyer thing, right? So then the question is, and what I will tell you is that, again, my firm is large enough that it's hard for me to see that in any one place. I think within the personal injury division, which is like a firm within a firm, I can sort of see that when you see that compensation gets too low as a percentage. And we saw that when you look at the examples that Mike Morris throws out, and you look at the Fireproof Consulting, they see people that are as low as 25% on compensation, and those are not firms that are taking care of their people. I almost see it on the Blue Shark side better, in that you can watch an agency go into the 30s on profit margin. It means you're not allocating enough for your clients. And if you're in the teens, you're not taking enough to sort of run the firm, to be taking what you should be taking. And so that I could see it more easily on a non-law firm balance sheet, almost, because it's a simpler widget. You have so many different moving parts. So to me, yes, you want to know your percentage, you want to know your numbers and know where that is. And somebody as sophisticated as Mike Morris runs a firm that's essentially almost like a non-law firm. It's really a business that happens to do law that most of us have not elevated to. So when we look at this, I would say that that is a factor. But one of the things that I would hope is, you know, your attorneys and know where their bandwidth is individually. The place where you get clogged is when you don't have, for example, the billing people and you're not sending out bills to people or doing collections, or you look at your phone answering and your phone answering goes below 90%. You know, that's the stuff that over the last year when we've been retuning is really looking at KPIs for intake. And there, you know, you have margin. That would be the first place to be. I want to make sure that I'm capturing everything, because look, an extra $1 million in revenue makes all your numbers look better.
Yeah. I mean, it really does. And I'm just wondering, okay, so if I have an extra million in revenue, should I take 400,000 of it and staff up because there's that 40%? Or do I say, let's only spend 200 and get my 60% down to 50 and be a lot more, palatable. That's the balancing test I got to make, because, I know my staff is good and they work hard. And I want to make sure that they're, firing and working hard all day, every day. But it may be that, like a perfect example, we're going to create a pod for a particular practice group that we don't really market for, but we have, 70 of these cases coming in a year that we can monetize. And my intake team says we can monetize 150 of them. So we're going to turn that into a pod that can manage itself.
And you've done this, you've talked about this on the show before. Like, you have this bandwidth money, whatever you want to call it. Are you going to double down? I mean, look, are you losing people because we've talked before? Are you not raising your second and third years to the point where they jump to the government? If you're able to keep people, locked in for an extra year or two because you're paying them $20,000 more, if you did throw some of that money back on salaries, would you have greater stability?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I don't think we've even talked about this. So I had somebody who left me a month ago, 5 weeks ago, to go and work for the government, and the issues were student loan forgiveness in a decade, and the government's healthcare plan is marginally better. Yours cost me $6,000 a year. If I wanted to add my family, I only have to pay $4,000 a year for the government to add my family, for about the same plan. So I really think it had more to do with the student loan stuff. But we got a call from that former employee 3 weeks into the new job saying, I am definitely in the wrong place. I need to come back. I was loving doing what I was doing. And is there any way we can make the difference up so that I can make this work? I was like, what, for $2,000? I can't ever give you student loan forgiveness. I said, what if we go up 10 grand and that's your new base? And then you work off of that. And they jumped at the opportunity. And the great thing for me is that this is a woman who was due to have a baby in the beginning of June. So essentially we gave her 2 months pre-baby. She'll take 3 months post-baby as a maternity leave. And then she's going to come back in September when she's going to quit her other job. I'm excited about that. And that has actually happened. That's something that we posted in the group. Boomerang employees, people who leave and then come back because they don't realize how good they had it.
Where we just got an admin who left with another lawyer a few years ago. I didn't even realize, I didn't put two and two together, that a sort of a problematic family lawyer, when I was trying to start that practice, left and took somebody who was decent, coming back to law clerk now that she's in law school.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, those are nice, but it's a mixed bag, right?
Yeah.
It's are you putting rose-colored glasses on, or was there
probably?
and the idea is, what I always talk to people about is the exit. I remember once when I was exiting a place years ago, before I even had a law firm, and when you do right on an exit, how you exit shows so much about you, because it's so easy for that relationship to go south at some point. There's so many, like any breakup, right? Even boyfriend girlfriend stuff. Like, how do you make a thing where nobody?
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Seth, and say that you maintain good relationships with 95% of your breakups.
I do my best. And I remember Bill Umansky, friend of the show.
No, I'm talking about girlfriends. Like
girlfriends? Well, it's been a while.
I know it's been a while. It's been
a while. No, but you know what? I two schools of thought. And I think as I got closer to the finish line, where when you're in your early 30s from me. I was in my early 30s, and it was those breakups did not stay as friendly, where there was more vested. Whereas back in the heyday of casual fun, 20s, much more so. As I reflect back, and I don't know what that means, but what I would, when there was a, hey, is this the right one? Yes or no. And when it wasn't, those didn't go. But if it was like you're 25 years old and you said, hey, I'm going to be like traveling the next 6 months, we probably, go have fun. Those much more. I thought you were going with the employees, because Umansky, I remember, had a much more robust firm, and he did a pretty darn good job of staying in touch with people who went off to compete against him. Yeah. And that to me has been sort of the ultimate test. I count very seriously. I've had one devastating loss. When I say devastating loss, a guy I loved so much, made money, was everything I wanted, and was given the opportunity to go into business with his childhood friends.
Oh, well,
it's but
you're never going to be able.
Retained of counsel status has been as positive. When he put his farewell, I wish it was that gracious with all of these. But as you know, when people leave, and this is no different than breakups, right? There are times when you break up because you're like, no, this is not right. And there are times you're a wuss socially, and you may go 4 months and just wait till the person gets fed up with you for not being an attentive significant other. And so I feel like with those that have a clean breakup, and also who does the breaking up, you're much more likely to maintain that. And you just never know. Out of the blue, the very first or second PI lawyer we ever hired, who was not great. I was at an event, something social, and there's a woman who sort of younger, middle-aged woman. She looked very striking, and I knew her from somewhere. I sort of went to give a very gracious hello, and I got the signal very quickly, hug is not good. And it turned out, and it was somebody who had left. There was a breakup. There was no spade work done afterwards. I think they went to the defense side, but it was pleasant enough. But it was like, had I had that conversation, and then more recently somebody left, and I would have been in the right burning the bridge. Person didn't do right by us on the way out the door. But 5 weeks later, 10 weeks later, whatever it is, picked up the phone to see how they're doing. And it was as positive as you could be. So I think that part of that is can you figure out the right period of time before it's okay to reach out? Because it's a small fishbowl. I think Umansky had it right. If we can somehow keep those relationships, generally more good comes than bad.
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is, as a criminal defense firm in Connecticut, Connecticut is small to begin with. Criminal defense practice is even smaller. We're talking about, maybe 200 lawyers statewide that our firm interacts with regularly. And if somebody leaves and they've been with us for any period of time, they're likely going to fall into this practice area to some extent. Maybe they're going to a general practice firm and they'll cover the stuff. So you want to maintain relationships as best you can. I think that's just good business. I have had a couple.
Easier said than done, as you know.
Well, you say that though, but I have fired people, and in fact, I fired somebody a year ago. You met, who I just texted 2 days ago when we were talking about jury selection, and I said I have a great story about trying this case with this other lawyer that I eventually fired, and get along fine now. He sends referrals our way, right. And so.
I'll leave this. We got to wrap this up. But is there an ideal period of time when somebody leaves, either by their choice or your choice? Easier if it's their choice, but because it's very hard to say, I just fired you, now be my best friend.
Oh,
and look, I do everything. I go outside the playbook. I don't know if you do this, but my attitude, and I say don't record this, but we're recording it obviously. Is if I can help somebody land on their feet, whatever it takes, just because it doesn't work for me, you have to be humble enough to know, unless somebody stole from you, that right. You want them to be in a good place. And absolutely. I've seen
I want people who leave me to succeed so that it reflects on me.
Right.
With the foundation that I gave them.
They need to mature. Most of the time they come back later and say, oh my God, I can't believe what I did. I was with you, but it is what it is. It's, my favorite was one of my law partners, guys came out to Blue Shark right as we started up, and he was going to help me with business development. And he was terrible. There's no other way to put it. This guy, in a world where you're supposed to like call a bunch of people, he'd call like one person a morning, have tea. Great guy. He ended up leaving and he got a job with like a building association that runs the largest conference in Vegas. He has a portfolio of 12 people. He needs to schmooze them, charm them throughout the year. The greatest job in the world for him.
Yeah.
Like I see him now and I smile. I'm like, and I think that the more that we can sort of figure out, I always tell people during the interview process, if I can make you better off with me than without me, I want you working here. And if I can't, that's why I talk a lot about what people are making now, what they want to be doing, et cetera, because you don't want to bring somebody in who comes to this, oh my God, your comp plan, I'm making less than I was before. That's not ideal, even though money is not everything. So I feel like these situations are such that if you can figure out what it is that drives somebody both on the way in as well as on the way out, that
I love that.
Figuring out they're going to a firm, we don't do employment law, they do employment law. Can I do that? That's about as nice an exit parting gift as you're going to get.
Yeah. Okay. So last topic of the day, and this is going to be very quick. You are Mr. Conference. I mean, Facebook friends, and every time I open up my feed, there's a new picture of you with people at another conference. You just came back from Pilma, and I want to know from you your one takeaway. Is it a new piece of tech? Is it a new idea for marketing? Is it a new idea for operations? Give me one good thing, because there's a lot of people that are listening right now who didn't go to this conference.
No, absolutely. And I think that the wake-up call there, we talk ChatGPT, we talk about AI, is meeting and spending time with lawyers in the hallway, one presented, maybe two, where you're figuring out what are they really leveraging AI for in the law firm. Market a company much easier. So I can't tell you this was the one thing that if you do this, this will make you more money. But it's the fact, this is the takeaway, that if you don't start to, at the executive level, have these conversations and processes in place to make these things happen, they're not going to happen organically. With my EOS quarterly on Blue Shark, every division has 2 beta tests that need to be performed with AI or ChatGPT, whatever tools they want to use by the end of the quarter. Law firm not motivated the same way. And when I saw, this was my epiphany, it's only going to come at the top. The people you have on board are not going to figure out how to do these things, and that you and or somebody you hire is going to need to come up with these things, implement them, and then bring the employees on board. But that if you're waiting for your employees to do it, and everybody is doing it successfully, it's not like, oh, my team really loved this. No, you built a team that's anti-AI, that's old school to a certain extent as a law firm, and that what you want to do, you're going to have to go do that hard work. And this is not, I wish there was a soundbite I could say, do this and you'll be fine. But just like when the web came up and you and I met ourselves way, way back at like above a head house, figure out where those conversations are happening. And some of it now, thankfully, you could even get through a TikTok or watching YouTube. You can get a lot of this stuff online, and there's no substitute for playing and figuring out what works. The only thing better is speaking to people about what's working for them.
So, and it's interesting, I'm going to bring up a couple of things. Number one, in my criminal mastermind that's actually a meeting this week, we actually have someone coming in to talk about ChatGPT, Isabel Bedoya. If you're not following her on LinkedIn, you're missing out. She's phenomenal. So I have her coming in to speak to my mastermind group all about how we can put our marketing explosion through using GPT and AI. Let me tell you something that I'm doing now.
Repeat it.
Isabel Bedoya. Bedoya. And one of the things that we ran into a problem with, and I don't want to go too long on this, but I'll make it succinct. So one of the problems that we had during COVID, lawyers need to keep up on the most recent case law that comes out, because if you don't know what's going on with cases that are being decided, you can miss opportunities for your clients. So one of the things that happened during COVID is that we had a bunch of law students who were looking for stuff to do. They were stuck at home. We created this case law podcast where every week we would have these law students. They would brief the cases. We would get in front of a mic. We would record the case law podcast. And we did it for about a year. And when we did that, the it was just a labor of love. It was 4 law students briefing, getting into a studio, recording things. Ryan McKean was working on it with me, and we let it drop after the end of COVID because we lost the law students. It became a lot more work, and it's 2 weeks ago. Using 3 different AI products, we were able to put out a new episode, and I did one yesterday in under an hour. We used case text, we used chat GBT, and we used 11 labs to do voice cloning. And we are in a situation where we are now turning around this case law podcast in an hour every Monday when the cases hit the street. And we are able to build our brand that way with a minimum of actual legal work. In fact, yesterday.
When do you and I get to stop talking? When can we just have some bots do our podcast for us?
You know, it may not be a bad idea. I bet you we could put together Ask ChatGPT, and we'll put together a script and then have it recorded, and we'll put out an episode, and we'll see if people can identify which parts of the session was.
The chat GPT is too rational. That we lose all the irrationality of our conversations.
That's definitely too. So what I'm going to do in the Facebook group, and if you're not a member, if you're listening, you're not a member of the Facebook group, please be sure to join our Facebook group, the Law Firm Blueprint. And of course, if you're listening, you are on our podcast, so be sure to give us 5 stars. But I'm going to post the system for this AI podcast that you can do to build your brand name in your practice area, in your state, or if you have a national practice, you can do the same thing, and you can outsource it all to a VA who can do things. So please join the group and be an active participant. Seth, any last words this week?
Let's let these guys go.
All right, great show. We look forward to next week. We are here. I am Jay Ruane. He is Seth Price. We are the Law Firm Blueprint. Bye for now.